Welcome to the Real Wedding Talk podcast. I'm Stephanie, an event florist of 7 years, and I am bringing you real talk for real couples planning real weddings. My goal is to have short, helpful, down to earth chats on all things weddings to help you plan your big day without the overwhelm. Today, I'm here with California based wedding planner Nicole of Nicole Taylor Events. Welcome, Nicole. Thank you so much for chatting with me
Thank you
today.
for having me.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in wedding planning, what's your philosophy, what kind of couples you align with best.
Yeah, so I have been in the industry probably about 10 years. I got started right after I planned my own wedding. I feel like that's a big cliche. Like a lot of people get started that way. The love was always there. I was definitely that girl that watched all the wedding shows and all the wedding movies, and so always had that love, but never really saw myself as a business owner. So I actually have my degree in music, but kind of fell in love with wedding planning after my own wedding. So I've just been in it ever since. I feel like I've evolved a lot, as many of us do in the industry. For me, what I focus on is down to earth couples. I'm a very honest planner. That's one of my business core business values is honesty on both sides, and so I will always give you honest advice and tell my thoughts. And yeah, I love lighthearted people that like to joke and have fun. But on the flip side, I also plan with a lot of really, really busy couples as well. Couples that are, corporate, have a full-time job and just can't take on the load. So I have a good mixture of kind of a little bit of everyone, which I enjoy.
Yeah. So where do you work mostly? Because I know kind of San Francisco,
Mhm.
LA maybe. Where are you really
My
going?
hub is definitely San Francisco. I do a lot in Marin, actually, a lot in Tiburon,
Oh, okay.
Napa and Sonoma, Monterey Carmel, and then, of course, LA. So I have a good mix. I'm definitely a travel planner. I live in the Central Valley, so I don't actually live in the Bay Area. So all of my events I travel for, it's exciting. It kind of gets me out of the house a little bit, but I'm also, a mom. So I kind of have to ground myself and make sure that I'm kind of balancing that there.
Yeah, I actually travel a lot
Hmm.
too. I live
Oh,
in
okay.
Sonora, which is the
Yeah,
foothills,
super
very
close.
near you. And I don't I think I'm in working here just a
Hmm.
few times this season. I'm like up in Fort Bragg. I'm in
I know.
Mammoth. I don't
Have like one here this year,
yeah.
and it's the first one I've had here in a few years, like locally. So, it's yeah, we travel a lot.
Yeah, I like traveling. Actually, I'm like now I have a system. I get like flowers into my hotel room and make sure they're safe for the night and
Y-
load and unload. My husband does
Yeah,
most of that work, so I don't know how much he loves it, but we have a system going and we know like where to stay now when we go to certain places to make it
good.
easier, like the load and unload
Yeah,
easier. So it's fun to travel.
yeah, it's definitely fun. Um, Whenever I'm traveling, it's funny. Sometimes my couples will be like, "Oh, do you want us to put you here, at this little cute boutique hotel?" And I'm like, "That's really nice, but like I get back super late. I just need a really big parking lot. Like I need a big parking lot where I can find a place. I know there's going to be a spot, and so I kind of have my places that I've found to stay as well that work. Kind of my go-to.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because when I go out of town for weddings, I have a cargo trailer, like a 10-foot
Mhm.
cargo trailer that I tow with me. And I have to Google Earth all the hotels to make
Right?
sure that the parking lot is big enough for us
Yeah.
to park and then to back up. And like,
I know
it's a
it's
thing.
funny that, that kind of gets factored into the planning as well. My couples are just being nice. They're like, "Oh, we have a block here at this, cute little hotel." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it looks lovely." But honestly, I'm fine with like a, a basic hotel with just a big parking lot so I can make sure I can find a place
Yeah.
when I'm back at 1 in the morning or, whatever it is. So,
Yeah, exactly. I
yeah.
feel that. I feel that. Okay, so what do you offer in terms of full service planning, partial planning? I know there's kind of stigma with
Mhm.
day of coordination, like it doesn't
Yeah.
really exist from what I'm gathering with my conversations. So tell us like maybe the misconceptions that people have and what planners are actually doing, in terms of what you're
Yeah, so
offering.
I call it month of slash event management, partial and full. Obviously, full service is the whole thing, right? I'm there for you from start to finish, helping you book all your vendors, heavily involved in the design, all the logistics, RSVP tracking, any welcome events. And so that tends to work really well for my couples that are in the corporate world that are just don't have time because it's a whole, separate
Mhm.
job. The in between of that is partial, and the main difference is just kind of the amount of vendors I'm helping you with. Those are the people that really like to be collaborative. They still kind of want a hand in the planning, and they want to say, but also realize that there are some things that they would just rather pass on, to the planner. And then, yeah, the big misconception with day of and really month of isn't even month of for me. From a planning standpoint, there's no way to really come in, on just the day of and just do everything. So that's kind of the misconception there. And even if there's like a week before handover, we're trusting as planners or coordinators that the couple is going to create a really solid timeline. They're going to have reached out to their vendors
Good.
and confirmed everything. They're going to have all of their meal choices submitted and all their stuff organized. And so it's kind of, you know, a little bit daunting for me as a planner to just assume and expect that, which is why with month of I'm there for them pretty much for the duration. I'm a little bit different. I do monthly check-ins with my couples, even with the month of, and that's just to really offer them a space to check in on their progress and make sure they're on track. One of the biggest things that I hear from people is that they're scared of, missing the little details, and those check-ins really kind of give them the peace of mind there. So I do that monthly with them leading up to their wedding day, and about a month before is kind of that true takeover of the vendor communication and all of that. But I do create their timeline for them with that, and help them with their layout and all that logistical stuff because you know, then I really know that it's done properly, and if something goes wrong, it's my fault. And,
Right.
the day of thing too, if something went wrong, it would be my fault. And then I'm just kind of fumbling around, like, wondering what's going on. Oh, well, this timeline doesn't make sense. And so, there really is no true day of coordination. People that offer that, it might just be pared down a little bit, maybe a few weeks before. But for me, I really like to make sure that you are in a really good place as a couple and you're secure in the timeline and that things make sense, they flow properly, and it just makes things so much easier on the wedding day.
Yeah, I feel like having somebody come in truly the day of is putting a lot of people at a
Mhm.
disadvantage because you haven't had time to connect with everybody. And maybe the misconception is like, oh, they're just going to tell everybody when to walk down the aisle and when the dancing is supposed to be. And it's much more than
Right.
that because when people are supposed to start walking down the aisle and they're missing because they ran to the restroom or the
Yeah.
shoe broke or something like that, then who's doing all that, and if you have a vendor it's like, "Where'd
Mhm.
you put the ice? Where'd you put the napkins? Can't set up over there, you
Yeah.
have to set up over here."
Yeah.
You can't do that really as
Yeah.
walking on there that day because you don't have enough knowledge base, so I see
Yeah, and a lot of
definitely
that
that
prep
makes
work
sense.
is, done before then. To your point too, I do a lot of that back end work with my couples in terms of like what if scenarios. So in my final calls, I do a lot of, okay, what if this situation happens? What if this happens? What if a guest is drinking too much? What if someone wants to give a speech that's not on the list? Some of those things that people don't think of, but they're on there because they've happened before. So I feel like I, need to
Yeah.
cover all the bases, and then people just feel a lot better and they feel in a lot better place after going over those what ifs. I always say, it is a live event, so anything can happen, but being
Mhm.
prepared for the situations that could happen and kind of what to do and who's your decision, like who can make decisions on your behalf. Is it me? Is it your mom? Uh, all of that kind of prep
Mhm.
work definitely helps make them at peace a lot more.
And every vendor that I've talked to so far has said what an asset a planner is and that they've at least thought about, if
Mhm.
not acted upon,
Uh,
requiring a planner as part of booking that vendor because
mhm.
sometimes venues will say like you have to have a planner. And I get that, but now
Mhm.
there's other vendors that are saying you have to have a planner to work with me because especially
Yeah.
photography and DJ get stuck with the burden of
Mhm.
timeline and things and they are then not able to
Yeah,
be
they're
their
not able to
creative
focus on
selves
yeah, because
fully
if your
because
photographer's over here trying to keep people on track, reading your timeline, and they're like, "Oh, okay, like, it's time for everyone to get lined up," like, that's not their job. You hire a photographer
Mhm.
to, take your photos, not to be your coordinator. In the same kind of realm, you don't want your aunt or your mom or your cousin doing that either, even though they could. Just because they could doesn't mean they
Right.
should necessarily. And so that's where having kind of a neutral, separate person handling that is definitely helpful. And I've seen that as well with a lot of vendors requiring either a planner or at least a coordinator to kind of take control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So, is there anything that you're seeing that tends to be the most stressful part for couples as you're kind of in their process from the beginning? What are most couples struggling the most with?
I feel like one is probably the guest list. That's really hard, and that's probably a really common
Mm,
one that you've heard.
mhm.
I also feel like some people have a hard time visualizing things, and so they might see what
Yeah.
what looks nice on either Pinterest or like wherever they're getting their inspiration, but they can't visualize it, and that's okay. Not everybody can. Not everybody can see something on
Mhm.
paper and look at a space and say, this is gonna look good, right? And that's why you have a planner helping you if that's a part of their service is design. And so a lot of it is like a trust the process. And I feel like there are some couples who have a hard time with that. And it's not their fault. Sometimes they're really type A and they, really like to be in control. Um, and again, it's not a fault, it's not a bad quality, but having someone that you trust on your team is definitely beneficial to you so that when you get to that point, you can hand over your day and just fully trust that person. And what I do is try and build that relationship during the planning so that when it comes time to do that on their wedding day, they're like, I trust you. You can take over, make your decisions, put this here at your discretion, or, however you want. And so sometimes it can be a struggle at first and difficult with trying to trust the process type of thing because they've never done this. Most of them have never done this before, but that's something that I try to assist with.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, being flowers, like,
Yeah.
visual is important, and there is also that I just had a sit down I don't do
Mhm.
sit down conversations with my brides or couples typically, usually phone conversations and emails is sufficient, but one of them this past year was like, "I
Yeah.
really have a hard time visualizing, can we
Yeah.
sit down?" And I'm like, "For sure." So we sat down and she kind of asked, she was like, "Well, how do I
Mhm.
know, like, I've showed you a bunch of pictures from Pinterest and
Yeah.
from my past work and everything, like, how do we know that you're gonna
Yeah.
give us that?" And I'm like, "Well, you have to trust me. This is why you're hiring me. I
Mhm.
replicate these things, what we've talked about, to the best of my ability. You've seen my work. I can show you, like,
Mhm.
inspo photo versus reality as time went on, but you
Yeah.
do have to
It
trust
is.
me, and I know that's so scary." And to be honest, she was the first bride in 6 plus or 7 years that's asked me, like, "How do we know that you're actually gonna make this?" And I was
You
like, "Well,
don't necessarily, but
my
you've
only answer is you
hired
gotta trust."
me. So, at
Yeah.
some point in your hiring process or your thought process of hiring vendors, you chose me, so that resembles some sort of trust. And that's the biggest thing too. I try and
Yeah.
establish that from my very first conversation with people. And that goes back to, just being an honest planner, an honest person. Um,
Mhm.
and establishing that trust at the start. There's a reason why people hire you or me or whoever they hire because they feel a connection and they feel they can trust them.
Mhm.
And so it is hard to visualize, but at the end of the day, it's a kind of a trust the process because also not everything is going to look exactly the same, like to a T, especially in the creative realm. You have some creative direction that you can take. So I feel like we try our best and get it as close to their vision as possible. But I've never had anybody walk in and be like, ew, this is not what I thought. So, yeah.
Right. Okay, so are you noticing any commonalities with the things that are most important to the couples that you're working with? Are they like, this is the most important thing for my
Hmm.
day? Or I'm sure you ask them, like, what are your
Right.
priorities? Because you can't prioritize everything. Some people are like, I want really good flowers.
Yeah.
Some people are like, that's the last thing on my list. So, what are the most common,
Yeah. I
most
do.
important things?
I do go through the kind of top 3 of them because at the end of the day, that's where a lot of your budget is gonna be allocated or, we might allocate a little more towards your
Mhm.
number 1 priority. If you're on a strict budget, then that means we have to kinda take a little over here from this category. But I think the most common thing that is important to people nowadays is their guest experience. They just want people to have a good
Mhm.
time. They want people to feel like it's a big celebration, a big party. Some of them that involves the looks, the flowers, some of that involves the entertainment or the food. But I think the number one thing is they want
Mhm.
to the guest experience to be top notch. So I think that that's kind of where
Yeah.
they're headed, and I feel like COVID had a lot to do with that, uh, because we couldn't have weddings for so long, and then now that, we can, things have kind of shifted into what's important. It kinda made people think. So, yeah, we're still kind
Mhm.
of feeling the effects of COVID, I feel like, in that sense, in the way that the industry has shifted a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I agree because when COVID
Mhm.
happened, it shut everything down. And then when everything opened back up
Yes.
again, you had these massive celebrations that was much less about the experience
Yeah.
and more just like we can do this. So it's massive. And now for
Mhm.
me, I feel like we've swung into this like middle
Yeah.
ground where it's like an intimate and people are really focused on giving the
Yes.
guests a good
Yeah.
time, which I love because as a guest at a wedding, like I tell people too, people
Mhm.
remember food and music and drinks, and they
Yeah.
remember the flow of the day. If it's, like, really hot and they had to wait an
Yeah.
hour and a half with no hors d'oeuvres,
Yeah.
they're probably gonna be talking about that, so I think that now couples are like, "Let's make
Mhm.
sure we have a really nice flow and a really nice
Yeah.
experience for
Yeah, and
everybody."
that all goes
So I
into
agree with you.
there's several things that go into that, but a really good timeline is gonna, help with that. And I hear people all I think my number one complaint or, pet peeve from people that I hear is long lines at the bar. They're like, "We don't want people waiting forever for a drink." And
Oh,
it makes sense, you have a limited amount of time for cocktail hour, you wanna make sure that people can get their drink, and I hear from venues and caterers all the time give their recommended, like, bartender to guest ratio, and I'm like, "That's not I don't know how you have 1 bartender per 100 guests." Like, it does not make sense to me. So
yep.
that's an area where I kind of try and encourage a little bit, "Hey, you might wanna add another bartender, or think about what to do here, if you don't want long lines there, because that factors into, people do remember, "Oh my gosh, I had to wait forever for a drink," or, "We were just standing around waiting, not knowing what to do," "We sat forever after dinner and nothing happened, so we left." So, all of those things factor into the guest experience, and I think that people are really aware of that nowadays.
Yeah, but have you noticed for better or for worse? For me, it's a little bit for worse because it helps with the visualization. The
Mhm.
whole Pinterest, lots of
Yeah.
technology, AI, Instagram. So I love that it's getting the visualization piece to
Mhm.
people to say, like, I like this, but I also
Yeah.
think it's terribly unrealistic. And in terms of AI, it's changing, like, it's showing flowers that
Yeah.
aren't flowers, it's showing mechanics.
Yeah.
They're just floating above the table magically. And people are
You
like,
do
yes,
know
I
that's
want
AI.
this. I'm like, well, so
Yeah.
how, yeah, yeah. So how has that affected
Yeah, I
you in
feel
the
like,
planner world?
when I sit down to do, like, someone's design board and I don't it takes me quite a while, but I feel like it has more so hindered than helped. Only because
Mhm.
it sets those unrealistic expectations. And it's not even AI, it's all the whether it be influencers or everything you see, it's like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, my wedding is a show." I have to have the most of this, the best of this.
Mhm.
This is on trend. And so I feel like social media and AI, they're helpful to an extent, but at the end of the day, we have to kind of be realistic. And that's where I have to bring people kind of back down to earth in a sense and say, hey, this is beautiful, but it's not realistic either within your budget or mechanically, it's just not real. I think back to, I think the first photo I saw of like a wedding that was AI generated and they were, like, submerged in the water, and the table was kinda just floating on top, and they were all beautifully, like, sitting in the
Oh.
water, and yeah, and
Mhm.
I'm like,
I think
"This
I've
is
seen this, yeah.
unrealistic." I think it was, either Bridal Guide or one of the big publishers and blogs posted it, that people were just going off in the comments, they're like, "You can't be doing this, like, this this is AI, for one, and then there was the whole thing about, like, you should be posting real photographers' work and that's a separate thing. It does kind of set unrealistic expectations because there are a lot of people that follow those social media accounts. They're like, "Oh, well, this is a good idea. This is great. This looks like we could do it." But at the end of the day, it's just not achievable. So I think to an extent it
Yeah.
helps for inspiration, and I try and find, you know, work from real photographers and past weddings and, florists, their past work to
Mhm.
compare and kind of give an idea of inspiration. But I don't think I use AI for anything in my job. Even my email responses are all me, responding. So yeah.
Yeah. Me as well. I tried AI to
Yeah.
generate some captions. Like, I'm like,
I do too.
captions. I really dislike social
It's the
media. It's
weakest
the least
point
favorite part of my
of my
job.
business.
So, yeah. And I have a degree in business admin and marketing, but I
Yeah.
still don't like to do my own stuff. And so I tried AI to do some captions, and then I always do an audit.
Mhm.
Like every couple of weeks I'll go back and like edit things that I don't like, and every single one I found myself going back and being like, that
Yeah.
doesn't sound like that's
Yeah.
totally inauthentic. Why did I do that? And so
Yeah.
now I don't do it. Now I don't do it at all. I mean, I use
Oh,
it for like
yeah, like
home,
that kinda stuff
recipes
or
and grocery lists and things, but
yeah.
not for
I know, it's interesting.
work anymore.
I really try my best to be myself. There's a fine line of being professional but, also including your personality. But yeah, it's interesting, AI.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so walk us through a typical day for you. You are running around. When are you finding you're probably packing snacks in your pocket and snacks for couples? And how long is your day? How many points of contact, if you could even estimate? Gosh, that's probably a terrible question that you have during the day when you're checking in with all the people. And then what helps you
Yeah,
do your best work?
so I am usually on site as soon as the venue will allow me. Sometimes that's 2 hours before ceremony start time, which in those cases, I really, really try and negotiate getting in earlier because some of it's just impossible to do in 2 hours. I know.
I hate those ones for the
Yeah.
record. I've like full
It's
setups for floral in 2 hours, usually it's
yeah.
like country clubs, golf courses, things like that, and I totally get it because
It's
they have
hard.
open
I know.
business and open
It's
clubhouse
so
golf, and I
hard,
was
and
like,
I really try and prep my
it's
vendors
so hard.
beforehand, obviously, and say, "Hey, just so you know, this is the time we can get in, and, if you can bring everything as much put together or ready as possible," and those ones
Done.
it's hard. But I'm usually there as early as I can be. Typically, I drop my stuff. If the couple is getting ready at a completely different, location, then I will typically stop by and check on the bride. If they don't need me to, I just head straight to the venue. But sometimes the bride or, the couple will forget to give me some decor the night before, or, they need to pass along something
Yeah.
and I can come pick it up. Sometimes I just come and check in on them. I'll text my couples, "Hey, on my way. Do you want coffee?" Most of the time they're like, "Oh, we have food, we're good." So touch base there and then head to the venue, check in with venue staff, and then typically I start kind of arranging all of the decor that the couple has. So place cards, table numbers, welcome setup, all that kind of stuff. Greet vendors as they arrive, make sure that when the couple arrives, if they have not seen each other, I establish a point of contact with each one and I say, "Hey, please call me or text me when you're on your way," so that I can make sure that if one of them is here, they're hidden, kind of thing. And so there's a lot that goes into that. Pin the guy's boutonnieres. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like everything that I do leading up to.
Well, that was a terrible question. I should retract my question because basically you are,
Mhm.
for one, making sure that all the vendors are there
Yeah.
because there have been kind of remote venues that
Yeah.
I have
Yeah, so
gotten
in that case, I
lost
make
because of
contact with people like,
directions.
"Hey, are you on your way?"
And
Yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
like, to be the point of contact too, and I
Yes.
always leave myself
Mhm.
an hour extra just in case, so it's not been a problem. However, I have
Yes.
needed a planner contact to be like,
Mhm.
Am I going the right way?" Or just to say, "Hey, I'm 20 minutes behind now
Yeah.
because there was an accident,"
Like
or
I had
whatever,
yeah, and I
and you're
had one in
checking in with
November and,
everybody.
I had checked in on the bride and then, I left and she calls me and she's like, the baker is like, I'm MIA. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like they know, we talked to them this week and they know to drop off the cake here and whatnot. They were MIA, so it was this whole thing. And then because I think we had sent a like a task rabbit or something to pick up the cake because that bakery didn't deliver. And the guy was waiting there for like 30 or 45 minutes and baker was nowhere to be found. So I had to, you know, figure out that situation. I truly never I don't know exactly what happened. Eventually we got the cake. There's small things that go on behind the scenes that having a planner can really help you. But yeah, kind of all that vendor management and communication, making sure everything is set up. I'm typically in charge of anything that the couple provides me. So signage and uh, you know, all the little stuff. So I make sure that that's set and in place, line everybody up, for ceremony, cue that. I usually have, if I can't see, you know, I'll have my assistant kind of placed near the DJ or band or whoever, and we wear little in-ears. So she'll cue me, okay, send officiant, send groom, send wedding, all that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, after I make sure that after the ceremony is done, typically I recommend that the couple just take 5 to 10 minutes by themselves. Sometimes that's the only alone time that they have on their wedding day, where they're just truly alone without people, photographer.
I
So
love that.
I communicate ahead of time with catering, hey, at this time, can you have a plate of apps and each one of their, signature drinks waiting? They have their time. 10 minutes later, they sign the marriage license and then kind of head to cocktail hour or photos. Line everybody up for grand entrance, cue speeches, all that kind of stuff. Yes.
Monitor speeches for
Monitor
those that get out
speeches.
of control.
I typically don't eat like a meal until dinner time. The best time for vendors to eat is when guests are eating because there's nothing to do. Sometimes caterers and
Yes.
venues are a little funny about that. They're like, well, no, we'll feed you after the guests are done. And I'm like, but after the guests are done, like we all have to go back to what we're doing, so that can get a little funky. But I snack throughout the day. I have like chopsticks. My go-to is like a mint Cliff bar and a gallon of water. My days are typically like 14 or 15 hours. So I'm first to arrive and usually last to leave. So once they're sent off, I kind of start packing up their decor, make sure I get it to whoever is taking it. Sometimes it's parents, sometimes it's left there, and I'll leave it in a room and lock the door. And then I make sure all the other vendors are taken care of and load out. And then if there's a 24-hour McDonald's around, I get a Diet Coke and I head back to my room.
I read that on your website. That was a really cute part of your website.
It
You're like, my
is.
favorite thing is a Diet Coke, specifically from McDonald's. So I am not much of a soda drinker. I
Uh
don't
huh.
love soda.
Yes.
Nothing against it. I just don't like bubbly things.
I don't know.
So
Like,
what
there's
is it about the
something about it.
McDonald's Diet
I
Coke?
don't know what it is. And there's one like 3 minutes away from my house. And I will get in my car and like go through the drive-through. I'm like, okay, just a medium Diet Coke. And they're like $1.84. I'm like, yeah, I know. And I come home and I have it with dinner and I don't know what it is. Like I don't particularly like it out of a can. If it's there and it's the only thing, then maybe, but I don't know why. I don't know why it's specifically McDonald's Diet Coke. And my brother agrees. Sometimes I'll text him a picture and, of my Diet Coke and I'll be like, what's your count today? And I never have more than one. I definitely don't surpass that. And I don't think I have it every day. Uh, but I'll text him, I'm like, what's your count today? And he's like, no joke. I'm already at 2, might have a third before the gym, and it's like, 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So, yeah, I don't know what it is, but
I've heard that about the glass
mhm,
bottle Coke,
yeah,
regular Coke in the glass bottle. Something about those
yes,
people say is, obviously the sugar is higher. Maybe it's like the amount
yeah,
of CO2 they have going through the tubes or the fact that they probably
probably, yeah,
swap it out a lot so it's always
I don't know.
fresh.
Who knows? But
Who knows?
yeah, something about it for me. Like it just hits the spot.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I everybody has that thing that's like just it's like the perfect treat.
Yep.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what helps you? I mean, obviously, a good vendor team is
Mhm.
like the most valuable thing. So, what are you looking for when you're making vendor suggestions? For me, it's like everybody pretty much can
Yes.
stay in their lane. I don't, I think that's the most respectful thing as a
Yes.
vendor to stay in their lane. So, the only thing for me that I've ever had to like depart from my lane was I've had this happen 2 events now. All the chairs were set up
Mhm.
and there was
Yeah.
like 2 trees, different venues, but it was like framed naturally by
Yeah.
landscape and the chairs were off center. And then so the arch now is off
Yes.
center of the natural landscape. And so I'm like, if it was 50 chairs, I probably just would have done it
Oh,
myself, but
yeah.
both events were over 150, and I was like, I'm gonna have to really
Yeah.
step outside my lane and go tap either the rental company or the
Mhm.
planner and tag them in here and be like,
Yeah.
"So this doesn't look great to me,
Mhm.
but it's your job, so I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but I
Yeah.
will strongly suggest
Yeah,
that
and
you
that's the kind
shift
of
all of
stuff that
those
I
chairs."
always welcome and appreciate. I'm obviously a big firm believer in we're all a team. Everybody has their specialty. So I'm never going to step into, or step in and take over what a florist is doing or say, hey, like you need to do it this way or that way. Uh, Same with the DJ, same with photographer. I am the point of contact, but I'm not your boss, right? I'm here to make your
Right.
job as
Good
easy
point.
as
Yeah,
possible
yeah.
for you. And if you need me to help in some capacity, I will. Like, there have been times where yeah, I'll adjust some chairs or I'll help with, putting out the plates or, the flatware if catering's running behind. I wear a lot of different hats on the wedding day, but I am in no way your boss. And I feel like planners get a really bad reputation for that, and it's so upsetting, because I feel like there's a stigma with planners that some of them feel they need to be in control of everything and, they are the boss, and it's kinda hard because, yeah, I do need to be, the kinda head of the team a little bit in a sense, the point of contact, but I don't wanna take over your
Sure.
job.
Sure.
Again, I'll step in and help, yeah, that's not my style, but I think that what helps me is definitely good communication. It's always a bummer when we have a venue that we're working with and communicating with or whoever it is, and, we'll go a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks without communication and multiple follow-ups. So, I
Yeah.
really try and set expectations for people and say, "Hey, sometimes, communication is a little bit slower in the wedding industry, especially at venues." There's a lot of events going on at one time, and so maybe they focus on things quarterly, but also in no way does that negate the fact that, there should be some communication, at least an acknowledgement like, "Hey, I got your email. Let me
Yeah.
get back
Yeah.
to you this day." Sometimes it's a little not scary, but
Correct.
I mean, maybe scary when a venue doesn't respond for a few weeks and yeah.
Yeah. Concerning, because then they're, like, projecting that it's
Yeah,
not as
and
important to them as it is to
yeah, and I
you.
had a
That's how it
venue,
makes people feel.
in the past, when we expressed that and the bride asked, "Hey, I need a little more here for your communication." She had me jump in and help with the venue communication there in that sense. But they flat out said, like, "We're prioritizing events, 60 days and under right now." And that doesn't make you feel good, as a bride. I feel like in the wedding
No.
industry, it's obviously very joyful. We're very client facing. You have to have good communication skills. And a lot of it is about how you make people feel. And, at the end of the day, they're gonna remember that. They're gonna take that and be like, "Oh, well, I'm not important right now. My wedding's not important." So I feel like good communication is a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and it's not terribly difficult or
Yeah.
time-consuming to offer a simple response, even something like you said, as
Mhm.
simple as, "I
Yeah.
received your email, I'll get back to
Yeah.
you in 2 days," or,
Yeah.
I'm out of town, I'll
Yeah.
get back to you as soon as I get back," or
Yeah.
whatever, it takes, like, a hot second. Yeah. Is there anything that you see couples struggling with the most and slash or any questions that you wish couples would ask more of? So for me,
Mhm.
I just love when they ask me anything because there's
Yeah.
a lots of ideas on how to stretch budget, how to utilize budget, what to repurpose, vision,
Mhm.
vision-based things, what would work well. And I always design
Right.
in color scheme. I don't ever guarantee certain flowers. And so that's just what I do. And so we talk about broad vision. There's so many things. Even a bride I had ask me I got 2 different
Mhm.
quotes. They're vastly
Mhm.
different. I sent the same inspiration photos. Can you explain maybe why like, what could potentially be the differences? And I never saw the other quote. I don't know what it was,
Yeah.
but I do know it was for the same stuff. So then I had to
Mhm.
kind of break down my own quote and say, well, it's probably a
Mhm.
standard size preference. Like if I do aisle
Right.
markers, my aisle markers are
Right.
big because I want them to be substantial sitting on the ground. The other person maybe had
Mhm.
put small ones,
Right.
which is not my preference. We can do it, but it's not my preference for scale reasons. So I love
Mhm.
when I get the questions, why would they be different? What is something else we could do? What is the best bang for our buck? So what kind of things are you liking when couples are asking you?
I mean, I always like when they ask for, like, my honest opinion on something. I feel like they really value an outside perspective on things, and whether that's, if something looks good together, or, the difference between this quote and this quote, or this style and this style. So, I always appreciate that because that tells me that they're taking into kind of what I would recommend as the professional. So, I always enjoy that. Yeah, I think I would say I always like when they ask, yeah, same. I always like when they ask my opinion,
Same,
and,
probably, yeah.
yeah.
Just that you're a professional, so I mean, you have all this expertise, so
Yeah, to
to
get
get
to
to,
express it, and,
say it is really
that
awesome.
also tells me again that they, are trusting me, and, kind of helping them in a sense. Yeah.
Value your opinion. Okay, so looking forward,
Mhm.
like trend-wise, we've already kind of talked about the intimate wedding.
Mhm.
Trends though, like I'm seeing bows and lace. I was
Mhm.
really happy to see
Yeah.
pampas grass kind of scale itself
Yes.
back. That one lasted a really long time. So trend-wise, what are you excited that maybe
Yeah.
is
I mean,
gone
I feel
and what
like
are
this
you
one
seeing going forward?
has probably been gone for a while. Maybe not gone, gone, but there was a time where it was the height of rustic elegant was the term, which
Mhm.
there wasn't
Mhm.
anything wrong with it. I think it was just we were doing so much of it. I'm like, "Okay, let's, try and do something." And I agree. I see lots of
Yeah.
bows, I see lace, I see, kind of a bit more modern in people's designs. The use of calla lilies are like a big one right now. And I think that maybe not so much a tangible element, but there's a shift towards nostalgia. I feel like a lot of, and I don't know how old you are, but
Mm,
as a millennial, I feel like a lot of millennials right now are getting married, and that means that they like the Super 8. They like the camcorder, they like the digital film, and so I feel like that is really on
yes.
trend right now,
Yeah.
and kinda timeless. I feel like that'll carry through. And it is a trend, and I hear from people all the time that they don't necessarily wanna do something because it's trendy. They see trends everywhere, and I say, "That's okay." I get that. I get wanting to be unique, but sometimes what you like might align with the current trend, and that's okay. So, it's okay to
Mm,
have what you
yeah.
want, and, throw away tradition if you want, and go in a different way, and that's something that I enjoy about all of my weddings is they're different. Some of them really like to stick with tradition. They'll get married at Grace Cathedral and have the church wedding and then do the ballroom reception. Some of them get married
Mm,
on a hill, and come down to a restaurant and have their
yeah.
their thing. I had a couple bring all their guests over on a ferry from, San Francisco to Tiburon last year. So that was super fun. And um, I think the fact that people are adding in nostalgia and their own personalities to weddings is really shining through right now.
I love that, and I agree. Okay, so the biggest win or proud moment for
Um,
your business so far?
I think one is lasting as long as I have in the business.
It's hard
It
because the
is.
barrier of entry is low. So there's always people that are like, I like logistics. I'm going to be a planner or
Yeah.
I'm crafty. I'm going to be a florist. And so it's really hard. So that, I mean, that is a
Yeah, so
massive
I think
win
that
to say, like,
that's
you have a sustainable
I'm
business.
proud of myself. I, again, never saw myself as a business owner. Didn't even have any sort of like, I mean, I did get some certifications, but in terms of actually starting my business, I did it by myself. I didn't have any startup costs. I just kind of threw myself into it. And so, and here I
Yeah, yeah.
am, which I feel is a win for me. I think that another win, which was just kind of cool for me, a few years ago, I did a wedding for a couple, and the groom's dad was a soap opera star, and like a really big soap opera star. And so,
Oh,
that was super fun. And one
okay.
of the people in attendance was Bryan Cranston. So that was like a fun, kind of wedding. It was super hard logistically because they were at their parents' house in the Napa Hills. So, the transportation up there, we had to have sprinter
Okay.
vans taking 12 people at a time, and it's one way, hairpin
Yeah,
turns. So we had
it's
to
hard
like
there.
time all
Mhm.
of that. So logistically, it was really hard, and I was proud of myself for doing that. I did back over a sharp rock right before the ceremony, and just kind of, I was like, well, my tire's flat, and I can't do anything about it. So, I'm going to leave it until after, and obviously shifted all my focus towards the wedding, and was texting my husband, and he has my location. So he sent a tow truck like after the wedding. It was like 11:30 at night in the dark hills, and got my dummy tire put on. But that whole wedding was like a it was it did go well,
It was a
aside
win
from the
that it
tire,
went
but the
well,
ball
yeah.
did. But that was a good one. Yeah.
Awesome. I had I, like, pulled
Mhm.
up in like,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
a private house, and it was like a meadow kind of a situation, so, like, I pulled up right behind the last row of chairs to unload all my stuff, and I was unloading all my stuff, and then I went to get back in my car to move it, and the
Yeah.
battery was dead, and it was, like, in the ceremony, and so I had to go find and this was like a
Yes.
no wedding planner situation, it was very much like a backyard, thing, and I had to go knock on the door of
I'm so
the
sorry.
dad of the groom
Ye
and be like, "Could you please jumpstart my car so I know you have a
Aw.
million things to do." And he had a little, like, utility vehicle, and he, like, buzzed down and
Yeah.
got it all squared away. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that was."
Yeah, well,
Can
oh
you
my
imagine
gosh,
if my
and
car
mine
was
was,
stuck
like,
behind the last row of chairs the
it
whole.
was thankfully just right under view of their ceremony. Like, you could probably look out, and if you really wanted to, like, kinda raise up and look, you could probably see the top of my car. But I I had to tell them, I was like, "Hey, like, I gotta leave my car. Like, don't worry about it. Like, things are fine. Like, it's fine. I just want you to know it's there. It's not seen. Let's line up." So, yeah, it
Yeah.
was an interesting one.
Okay, so
Okay.
the ending of this is
Okay.
rapid fire, and this is your personal
Okay.
preference. This isn't like, it's just you personally. Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think I know these after we've talked for a while, but detailed timeline or flexible flow?
I lean detailed timeline, but a little bit of both, because I understand that there has to be some sort of flexibility in
Okay,
things. Yeah.
fair. Do you prefer the full service planning or the
Yeah,
partial?
sometimes it's even person
Or is it even
dependent, or
dependent, I feel
couple
like,
dependent, but for me, I like the full service. I like seeing everything come together, all the way through. Yeah.
from beginning to end?
Intimate.
Big guest list or intimate
And that's coming
celebration?
from, yeah, I had 250 people at my
Bold?
wedding, so,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I like intimate though.
Okay, that's a big one. Okay. Bold designs or classic
I like
and
bold.
clean?
If I were to get married again, I'd probably do bold. Yeah. 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 Like
I think
maximalist
I would
bold.
too. It's super fun.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah. Outdoor gamble or indoor guarantee?
Oh, I like being safe inside. Can I say, like, outdoor with
Do you?
indoor insurance? Like an indoor backup version? Indoor, yeah.
Sure. You can say whatever you want. Yeah.
Breaking the rules.
Tradition or breaking the rules?
Mm.
I'm the same.
Like,
And your favorite
ever
movie?
or wedding movie?
I want to say
Okay.
ever, but whatever you're comfortable sharing.
It's making me think.
Mine is the proposal, and not because it's wedding
Yeah.
related, but because it's with Sandra
Yeah.
Bullock and Ryan Reynolds. It's just like lighthearted and fun.
I've gotta
That
go
has to be my favorite.
classic and say Titanic. 90s
That's
Leo.
I need to rewatch Titanic
Yeah.
actually.
That
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fair. Okay, so tell everybody where they can
Yeah,
find
you
you,
can find
website,
me
social
on my
media,
website at
all the things.
NicoleTaylorEvents.com. You can find me on Instagram at Nicole Taylor Events. That's pretty much where I am. Instagram is what I update the most. If I am on there, marketing is hard, but I try I try and keep up. And I will say that,
Yeah, me too.
just because an event pro or wedding pro doesn't have a ton on their website doesn't mean that they're not working. So always ask for examples or visit their website. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
references.
It was
Fair.
such a
Thank you
pleasure.
so much for talking with me today.
All
This
right.
is awesome.
Thank you too. Bye.
I'll talk to you later.